Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Catholic Truth Podcast. We are so excited that you could join us today. And we, from time to time, have guests on our show. And we want everybody to know, love, and live their Catholic faith and to be transformed by Christ. And from time to time, we have many people on this show who have been transformed by Christ. Their lives have been transformed by Christ. And we want to share that with others because Jesus is real. He is true. He is love. He transforms lives and he takes people from all walks of life. I mean, even Satanists, witches, different religions, and he brings them home back to the light. And today we have a very special guest who has visit a lot of those avenues. His name is Henry Schliff. Hopefully that's right. He can correct me wrong if I'm wrong. And he's a convert to Catholicism after 20 years of being a Buddhist. And not just a Buddhist, but he studied most of the world's religions. He actually took a very hands-on approach, academically studying all of them, and even in person. He used to visit Jewish synagogues, Islamic mosques, Sufi temples, Hindu ashrams, and more. So he's very knowledgeable about a lot of the world religions. He's done a ton of study. And after 2 decades of being a spiritualist, self-identified seeker, Jesus, he said, found him on a dirt road in the mountains and opened his mind to the gospel and brought him back home. Eventually, Henry found his way home to the Catholic Church after a lot of searching. And now he professed last spring, I believe, into the secular Franciscan order. And now he is a religious education coordinator in Colorado. So we are super excited to have Henry here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us on our podcast.
Thanks, Bryan. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. We've had some amazing interviews. In fact, one recently with a lady who was a Buddhist, also a former New Ager and a stripper. I mean, she really hit rock bottom. And she talked about how you watched that.
Your podcast. Yeah.
It's amazing, amazing. Just the people we find. And these are a few of the millions of people that Christ helps. So it's really just amazing. And you're a religious education coordinator. That's interesting.
I just started, so I'm new to the game, but they just brought me on at Sacred Heart of Jesus in Boulder.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
And
Boulder's an interesting place to be Catholic these days. So it's not.
Well, if you need a confirmation speaker, that's what we do here. We could talk about that later. So I'm curious, Henry, from the youngest ages that you can remember, you studied the world religions and you wanted to find truth. And most people don't do that much searching in a lifetime. They don't really many people are just born into the religion. It's cultural for them. And that goes for Catholics, Protestants, Hindus, Muslims, everyone. They just don't seek truth, but you did. And you eventually found Jesus Christ and you eventually found your way home to the Catholic Church. So I want to talk about that. That's an amazing story, but let's start at the beginning. I mean, what led you to Buddhism in the first place?
Well, so my mom was definitely a seeker. So she was devout. I believe she was Methodist when she was young, very devout. My dad is a lapsed Catholic, although he's come a bit back to the faith. But I had this. I told you in what I wrote to you that I had this kind of vision, is the only way I can describe it. When my mom and I were driving the car one day, and she told me about a friend of hers who was Buddhist, and I got this crystal clear image in my head of the Buddha, and that's my earliest memory. From then on, I started kind of seeking spirituality. I wasn't raised with anything, so we didn't go to church. We certainly never went to the Catholic Church. Because my dad had a very strong reaction in his early adulthood to the Catholic faith. But yeah, so that's what started it out. And then my mom was very into yoga, Buddhism. And so that's kind of just the route I knew. And so that's what I took. Studied Zen mostly, and then got into yoga as well. The kind of more devotional forms of yoga, as opposed to I saw in your book, you wrote about Hatha yoga. Which is a bit of let me not call it a joke. It's a misnomer.
More of the yoga of today, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's an exercise practice, right? But I went to Kripalu Yoga Institute, and they were devotees of Swami Kripalu, and then and then Amra Desai, who was kind of I watched a video of him once. I mean, this was a he was a guru in the worst sense of the term, right? You know, he manipulated his students, he brought them in, kind of warped their minds into believing he was God, and all these sorts of things. But that's a little off track. But yeah, and you know, but so I from an early time, I feel like God was in my heart calling me. You know, there was this yearning that I had, that Buddhism never quite answered. Yoga kind of spoke to kind of all pervasive unity, a universal oneness or consciousness. You know, Buddhism, when I first started studying, especially Zen, didn't have that. You know, Zen is very much just kind of, you're here, you're on the cushion. You know, you're trying to get yourself free of your delusions, and that's about
Right.
it. So there was this yearning which I could not describe. You know, I just couldn't figure out what that was. But eventually, I got where I am today.
Yeah. So you did a lot of meditation, a lot of Zen meditation, which is, if people don't know, you can find it out in our book. My newest book is called Counterfeit Spirituality. We talk about all of the new age different practices, and Zen is an emptying of your mind, complete emptying of your mind to basically a state of nothingness, literally a state of zero, just blank. And you want to stay in that blank state as long as possible. Whereas you said you practiced yoga, which is different because you're trying to unite yourself. That's what the word yoga means, is to unite yourself to the universe, to the oneness of all that is, to a higher consciousness, perhaps. And so they're kind of different, but have some similarities, I would say.
Yeah. And as Buddhism developed in India and Nepal, you know, it changed. And so you get this tension in there, right? Where you have the more kind of the emptiness is the basis of things, and then they bring in this idea of Buddha nature consciousness, you know, which is much more akin, I think, to God, right? And I had a teacher, Rinpoche, down here in Denver, who I went to, and we were going through this intense, you know, Tibetan philosophy, and you know, all these debates and arguments, and they're talking about this universal consciousness, this Buddha nature, you know, and I just had to ask at one point, I'm like, well, this sounds a lot like the way that Christian philosophers describe God, you know, God the Father. And they just kind of paused. There was a big silence, and they're like, no. And I tried to get an explanation, but there wasn't an explanation, because there's so much similarity to the way some of the philosophers think about this universal consciousness.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So what kind of led you out of Buddhism? You know, what kind of problems did you find with the Buddhist religion? You know, what you're searching for God, you're seeking, you're thirsting for, something spiritual, but eventually you must not have found it in Buddhism. What it was lacking?
Well, so that was the moment that kind of shifted it intellectually. It's like, okay, well, essentially what they're talking about is God. And then I had this moment where I was thinking, well, you know, if they're talking about God, and the Catholics are talking about God, because I'd read St. Augustine, I'd read some of St. John of the Cross was a huge favorite of mine. You know, and so I'd read these ideas, and I'm like, well, they're talking about God, essentially. So it really comes down to a choice of, are you choosing this kind of nihilistic path of that all is nothing and emptiness at its basis, or is there something there? And that was the intellectual spark, which said, why am I actually following Buddhism? And I have a brother who's a kind of very fervent evangelical Protestant, and he sent me an email around this time, and it was kind of about the rapture and all these sorts of things, and he'd always been kind of pushy, you know, and I finally I was really angry at the time, and angry Buddhist, and I just snapped, and I wrote this, just this one line in all caps: "I'm a Buddhist, leave me alone." But it triggered something in me, and I was like, why am I so convinced of this? You know, why have I convinced myself of this path? And shortly after that, I had that moment on the road that you mentioned, where it was just I just felt the love of God. I experienced the love of God. And that changed me. In that moment, I came home and I can't even describe what happened. I just started reading the scriptures.
So you were
Uh,
searching for God, and yet God was searching for you. And it's like you
it
wanted
was,
God and you weren't finding it in Buddhism, but God found you and almost confirmed to you this reality, what you were seeking, that there is a God, and that he's real. So where did you go next after that? Once you realized that God was real, did you try other religions? Like where did you go?
well, no. So I mean, this is pretty recent. This is my conversion. I mean, I can talk about some of the other experiences I had, but I mean,
Sure.
um, you know, yeah, Brian, I can't really describe it. I mean, I started reading the Gospels. Um, and I was raised like a lot of secular people, I think, are raised, where Jesus is more like, I was talking to my son about this, it's like you hit your hand or you kick your foot, stub your toe, and you're like, oh, Jesus, that was my reference point for the Lord, was saying the name of Jesus in vain, and also this association of a number of kind of Protestant evangelical Pentecostal Christians who I had seen, who to me just lived a pretty hypocritical experience of Christ, very judgmental, and all you need to do is be saved, and you just got to get saved, and there's nothing else but that, and so I had to connect with Jesus myself, in my heart, and figure out who this person is. But that you asked what it was in Buddhism that never really fully satisfied my spiritual longing. That's it. I mean, there's no relationship. Even when there's this kind of ethereal oneness, which you're trying to become part of, there's no relationship there. And
Yeah.
I knew that I had a relationship with somebody, and I just couldn't put it into words. So I started reading scripture, and it snowballed. I mean, it's so fast.
It's
Within a month.
amazing how much you find about Jesus in scripture. Surprise, surprise. That's why I always tell Catholics to read scripture every day. I mean, someone once told me to read scripture every day, even if it's just one chapter. Start in the book of Matthew, read it till the end of Revelation, just read the New Testament. And so over a summertime, I did that. I took one chapter a day and I stopped at the parts that really struck me or made me think, or, felt like God was speaking to my heart, and I would reflect on those. And I tried to just do a chapter a day, and I did. Took a few months. It wasn't that long, but sometimes I read more if I felt like it. But the bottom line is I feel like I quadrupled my knowledge that I had of Jesus and
Mm-hmm.
just who he was. I mean, healing all the blind people, the power that he had, casting out demons, the power that he had, walking on water and calming storms, his power over nature, his power over sickness, his power over death, his power over literally everything. This is the Lord of all, not just another nice guy, a guru like Buddha or Zoroaster. He's like the Lord of all. And it changes stuff, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It absolutely does. And around that time, I started reading C.S. Lewis's Mere Christianity, and so I encountered his trilemma for the first time, and
Yeah.
that kind of triggered something for me as well.
Mm.
I mean, there were so many things that happened, and it's hard to put them all into a nutshell. Praying the Gospels, and I actually started praying the Psalms. I don't even know why, but I just started reading and praying the Psalms, and it was really hard to get into at first. It was just really foreign to me.
Yeah.
But that's where I went. And then it just one day I just said to my wife, and we're in a mixed marriage, so she's not Catholic, and I said, I think I have to, and we're kind of classic Boulder liberals. We were, and I said, I think I have to go to the Catholic Church. It's just this long silence. She's like, okay, but she's been incredibly supportive. She's been incredibly supportive on the
And
journey.
has she thought about it at all? Has she looked into it at all as well?
I think her heart is maybe moving there. It's been a period of growth for both of us. It's been it's the
Yeah, sure.
hardest years of our life, marriage was.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. Any kind of big change like that is absolutely difficult. And you
Mhm.
may, if you haven't read it yet, check out the book Rome Sweet Home, Scott
I
Hahn.
mean to. Yeah.
Huh? Have you read it?
I've meant to. I've meant to. I've listened to so many of his talks. He's
Because
great.
it's amazing, because it gives his testimony and gives his wife's testimony. And she secretly was going to divorce him, because he was becoming Catholic, and that's like apostate. And so they literally went through the hardest years of their life as well. And so it's very, a lot of people share that difficulty. I mean, it's like we got married under these premises and now you're changing that, it's some, especially for
Right.
something like holy, like I don't want that. I didn't sign up for that. And it's challenging and it's difficult, and it's challenging and difficult for us to change our old attitudes, our own responses, the ways we used to act and react to things. And yeah, good for you guys, for, pushing through it.
It is. Well, and I mean, the spirit has been working with us. I mean, it's very clear. It wouldn't be me because I have too much. I'm too impatient. I too fly off the handle too fast. But yeah.
Can you talk about real quick your loss of faith? I think I remember you talking about a loss of faith for a little while, because in school you had studied Judaism, you had studied Hebrew, Sanskrit, the deconstruction of religion, which kind of led to a little crisis of faith for you.
Yeah, well, because I went to Naropa, which I'm sure you're familiar with, in Boulder, and then I went to CU for graduate studies. And CU is all about kind of an anthropological approach to religion. So that they take as the premise that religion is a human-made thing. And we got into, Freud, a lot of Foucault. Foucault was huge. Foucault was the man, all about power dynamics and all this stuff. A lot of people were studying Nietzsche. And more importantly, the kind of erudite academics were informed by them. Like those were the philosophical ideas that were informing them. Kind of this critical theory and postmodernist thought. And it's all, it's deconstruction. It's taking it apart, sifting it out. And, I studied Derrida a lot, and he's all about getting away from the logos, and he believes that, no other thinker can get away from the logos except him. And he ends up with total chaos because he's taken away, that reason, which is at the basis of things.
Right.
And so I got into that, but I got enmeshed in that. And it just informed everything I knew about religion, any kind of religion. And so I just believed it. I got really angry. I kind of lost a sense of purpose that I had when I was seeking. It was a dark time.
When you lose the light. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I came back through Buddhism. I kind of found my core again through that. But then, again, it didn't have that spark that I needed, that my soul needed. The nourishment, I guess you'd say.
I'd be curious to know, like, since you've become Catholic, I mean, you studied, you longed, you thirsted, came back to Buddhism, still didn't get that spark. Do you feel like you have come home? Do you feel like you have found Jesus? Do you feel like you found peace? Do you feel like you are where you're supposed to be here in the Catholic Church?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I'd still say I think he's finding me, because it's been a very short time. So I'm still growing, I'm still growing in my faith. This job as the RE coordinator is a tremendous blessing. I actually recently went through a struggle, where I just got down on my knees, and was just praying. I said, I need to serve you more, but I have to have something here. Like, I need something. And the next day, our pastor came to me and he said, the religious ed coordinator position just opened. Would you be interested in taking it? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. God bless you in that.
Yeah, it is a blessing. And my son has decided to receive the sacraments.
Awesome.
And so I'm beginning to catechize him. And that's a growth too, So I'd say I'm learning to know Jesus more and more all the time, and his mother. I pray the rosary much more frequently than I used to. And yeah, just kind of trying to walk the path.
Were you you said, I mean, obviously we all have to grow. I mean, conversion, sanctification, that's like a lifelong process, right? And some people have like
the Franciscan way too, Francis said constant conversion, daily conversion.
Yeah.
Daily conversion.
And some people do that and some people don't. Some people have faith, but they don't really live it out. They just, oh, well, I believe, Yeah, where
Mhm.
other people, it's like day by day, Christ is calling us, changing us, purifying us from sin, from our selfishness, our selfish clingings, our false desires. I mean, we don't even know how bad off we are until we come into the light with Christ, and then He shows us. I mean, one person once told me just to sit in silence and ask the Holy Spirit to reveal to you, what you need to see or what you need to work on. And whoa, when He shows you what you need to work on, it's a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, we have to listen, right? I mean, that's what Solomon asked for, is a listening heart.
Yeah.
And it's so hard though. It's hard to get in that, especially in the lives we live, which are so busy, so packed full. And you've got your sports games on Sundays that you have to get your kids to, and that's your one time of the weekends. There's so many excuses that people
Should be
have.
easy for you. You were a Buddhist. I say that
Yeah.
I say that
Um,
tongue in cheek.
the silence is easier. Yeah, yeah, that part comes naturally.
Because that was not easy for me. I'm super ADD, ADHD. I would even say I can't sit still. They used to stand me in the back of the classrooms when I was in grade school because I was just so fidgety. I couldn't stay still. I'd distract everybody. And then in college, at my Catholic college, I decided to listen to God more. And I was just so filled with Him, so filled with His power, His Holy Spirit. I literally couldn't get enough. And I just wanted more and more and more of Christ. And so I sat in silence every day. And I just say, like, Lord, speak. Your servant is listening. Fill me with your power, fill me with your presence.
Mhm.
And I would just beg for more. And it started to become almost selfish. I just almost started seeking just to receive rather than just to give out of, generous love. And I remember I said, I'm going to sit for 5 minutes every single day in complete silence and just listen to God. I couldn't even make it 30 seconds, but I forced myself to sit through five long distracted minutes. And I just kept bringing myself back. And, over a month or two, I was up to like maybe 10 minutes. And most of that time could probably be in silence. But then it was around that time, a month or two later, that I was starting to get frustrated because I didn't hear anything. I didn't sense anything. I didn't feel anything. And I'm like, what is going on? I was like, God, I'm sitting here day by day. And I'd look around the chapel just for effect. And I'd be like, I don't see anyone else here, God. I'm the one giving you time. And yet you're giving me nothing. I almost felt like I was taking a centering prayer approach to God, or a Buddhist
Sure.
approach to God, where I just kind of sat in emptiness in a sense and just wanted to receive. And
Yeah.
after a few months of that, I was like, I'm done with this. I was like, if you're not going to speak to me, God, I'm out of here. I was like, no one else is doing this. And right as soon as I left the chapel, He whacked me over the head, spiritually speaking. And he just put this strong thought in my head. It was like speaking to my heart too. And He said, are you here for your own good, or are you here for me? Are you here to
Right.
receive, or are you here just out of love to give to me? And that hit me like a lightning bolt. I was like, oh man, you didn't. And so I literally, with my head down, I walked back in the chapel, and I had a whole different approach. And I said, fine, okay, I have been a little selfish. I have been loving the gifts rather than the giver of the gifts. And so, you know what, God, I'm going to sit here every day out of silence, out of love for you, whether I feel anything or not. I mean, even in marriage, you don't always feel everything every day, or even most days, but you still should give your whole heart and mind and soul to your wife and to your spouse. And so I sat there every single day, and over time, I learned to cultivate the presence of God and not sit in an emptiness, but fill my life and my heart in the presence around me with the presence of Jesus, and just be there in His presence, loving Him. And that's totally different, because then He does fill you up. When you give truly to Him, He always gives back to you.
Absolutely, absolutely. And maybe there's a bit of that emptying, in the sense of emptying ourselves out. It's a very
Yes.
different thing from the
Yes.
Buddhist view of things. But because then, like you said, we are filled, and especially when you're in the presence of Jesus in the tabernacle, I mean, I feel He's there, and it becomes more and more palpable. And I think, kind of like what you experienced, we experience it more throughout our days, I think, when we're able to give that time to God and just to be
Yeah.
still with Him.
Yeah.
But vocal prayers, I mean, I had coming from a Buddhist background, I had a really, really hard time with vocal prayer, because we just don't. I mean, we maybe chant some like mantras and stuff like that, but actually opening your heart and speaking to the Lord is is like what am I doing here? What am I doing? I have no idea
Yeah.
what this is. And so the graces that he's given me there have been tremendous. And that's where the Psalms, I feel like that's why he led me to the Psalms, is because that is the people speaking to God. And I learned to kind of I got free access to St. Rita, which is our little chapel up here in the mountains. And so I can go there at like 5 o'clock in the morning and do my prayers, and started reading the Psalms out loud, and then even kind of like vocalizing them, saying them the way they seemed like they were being said, like with deep, sadness or with frustration, and I think you learn through the Psalms what it is to talk to God. And that was
I
huge.
love
Yeah.
praying the Psalms. They're beautiful,
Oh, yeah.
especially when you're going through hard times.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Well, and something they do, which I think, you talk a lot about New Ageism. They force us to wrestle, right? Because these are people who were wrestling. And I think one of the great faults of New Ageism is it takes away the wrestling. It just says, okay, you can have this thing that you like, and you can have this thing that you like, and you don't have to worry about the stuff that you don't like, the things that really make you anxious or feel like, oh, what is this? Why do I have to do this? So I think the Psalms are great for that.
Absolutely. It's funny that you said you had a hard time doing vocal prayer when many of the saints are like, vocal prayer is good, but the goal is to get to meditative and contemplative prayer. And once you get there, it's almost no reason to go back many times. But have you read the book of Fire Within by Father Thomas Dubay?
No, I
It's an
haven't.
amazing book. It kind of similar along the lines of, what someone might want in Buddhism, but actually Catholic, and actually, because it talks about the different stages of vocal prayer, meditative prayer, and deep contemplative prayer, and then complete union with God, which is basically as close on earth as you can get to God. And it talks about that deep, deep, deep union, how to get there, what the contemplative life looks like. And basically it's a blueprint for anyone who wants to go super deep with God on this earth. And it's deep though. It took me 3 times to try reading it. The 4th time I was like, okay, I'm ready for this. But it's the philosophy of Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross, and Father Dubay kind of guides you through their writings and teaches you, what the mystics know, the people who have encountered Jesus face to face on a regular basis. It's one of my favorite books all time, probably top 3 spiritual favorite books.
Oh, good. Okay, I'll check that out. Yeah, some brothers and I are reading through the Cloud of Unknowing right now, and we're kind of practicing that. And so, yeah, that would be a good complement to that.
New
St.
Agers
John of the
love
Cross.
that book too, even though they take it out of
Yeah,
context and
yeah.
use
So
it.
you can go off track with it. You can
Yeah.
go off track with it. It can lead you in a not so good direction.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, yeah. So, but we're being cautious.
Um, so it's funny earlier that you said, I forget the word you used about yoga, almost like fake yoga or something like that. Like, or you said it was a joke. It's amazing how many of the Hindu yogis thought that hatha yoga was a joke, like they couldn't even take it seriously for the longest time. And nobody took yoga with exercises seriously. They thought it was a complete abomination to what yoga actually was. That's why I actually came across a book by someone who is a yoga master. He's a yoga teacher all over the world. And he actually puts the words yoga in quotes because he realizes that the yoga today can hardly be called yoga compared to what yoga actually is, which is why I addressed it so much in our I just find it fascinating. That's why I put it in the book, and we made 2 videos on it. But I find it fascinating, just the history of yoga and how it came about and how they have some truth. I mean, they do want to lead into some sort of union with something, but they just don't realize that the union that they're missing is Jesus Christ, the God that made them. They may even say it's Brahman or the universe, but they don't realize that what they thirst for is Jesus, the creator God, right?
Well, and you talk about it really well, and you actually taught me some stuff in reading those sections from your book. But I think you're right on it, and you quote the Catechism in your book, right? Where I'm going to paraphrase it, but how the Catechism says, truth is truth universally. So other spiritualities are going to hit on the truth from time to time, and I think what I want to try to communicate to people is like, yeah, there is truth in Buddhism. It hits it at points. Yoga hits it at points. Islam hits it at points. Judaism, definitely. There are older brothers and sisters in the faith. They hit it at points. But the fullness of truth is in Jesus, right?
Right.
And it's all there. And that's what you start to see when you follow him, that there's nothing lacking here. You don't need to go to these other traditions to find it. There's nothing that you need there.
And the
But
Catholic Church says that too. We don't need to
oh yeah,
go anywhere. There's nothing that Hinduism, Buddhism, or anyone else can teach us theologically that we don't already know because it's been revealed by the Son of God.
right. And to speak to the yoga thing, yeah, I mean, I've met a lot of very genuine seekers in yoga, right? They're looking for that truth. They are seeking it desperately. But then you have, this is where I think it's kind of a joke, right? You have a class in Boulder where they're doing these exercises and they're calling it yoga and they're sweating their butts off in their tights and all this stuff. And you actually have a class down there that prepares college students to go out and party that night. It gets them limber, it gets them relaxed, it gets their muscles all feeling good. And the whole intention of the class is so they can go drink and party harder than they would have without doing it. And it's
Wow.
like, what is that? What are we looking for here? What are we seeking?
That's
Uh,
interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. But this is
Wow.
this is why I say being a Catholic in Boulder is kind of it's a different ball of
Well, I
wax.
think it's an Americanism too. I mean, you could count,
Oh yeah,
and in the 1970s, I think in the 1980s, you could count the number of yoga studios on one hand in the United States. And then after it became commercialized, it just exploded into $1 billion business and it went all over. And then all of a sudden you have yoga shorts and yoga balls and yoga mats and yoga pants and yoga everything. And it's like, it's just basically commercialized. And I feel like that's what we do a lot of times in America. We commercialize everything, even Reiki, which is a
yeah,
pagan practice that's not from God. But even if you were to say, that it's legitimate, if you go to Japan and you study Reiki, you have to study for a year or two to go through Reiki 1, and then another year or two to go through Reiki 2. You're studying for years and years to become a Reiki master. Whereas in America, you can get a Reiki certificate over the weekend. And same
right.
thing with yoga. You can become a yoga master, yoga instructor just by getting a certificate by going to a course or something. And it's like, so is anything sacred anymore? I mean, do we put any effort into anything or do we just literally dumb it down to the lowest possible level? I just found that interesting.
I'm taking it that that's a rhetorical question.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just
Um,
sharing my thoughts off the top of my head.
but well, no, I mean, so this is what's happened with Buddhism too. I think a lot of times. So I did find a Rinpoche down in Denver, and he's legit, and he'll tell you the teachings of the Buddhist tradition, right? And this is one of the things that gets me. Like when Buddhism becomes popularized, it becomes a material commodity in America. Like we want to sell it and we want to be able to buy it, and so you have Tricycle and all your Buddhist magazines so that you can buy into Buddhism. But I've said to other Catholics, like if Buddhists were practicing the Orthodox Buddhism, you'd see a tremendous amount ethically the same between Catholics and Buddhists. Like
Yeah.
Buddhists would never, never, ever condone abortion. Never, never. You can't do it. The precious human birth is one of the four marks of Buddhism, and you cannot, if you do anything to disrupt that, then you're on a pathway to hell. And the Buddhist hells are crazy. I mean, they're off the hook. They describe them in detail. So it's a very ethics based religion, but that has been contorted to fit an American mindset, so that it becomes all more about mindfulness and not about how you live your life ethically and as a moral person.
Yeah, when I
Um,
was studying Buddhism, I actually found a lot of core similarities between Buddhism and Christianity, and morally and
yeah,
virtuously. And it's very interesting that we share so many similarities on that level.
no, I think it is, and I think there's a bridge there for a greater conversation,
Mhm.
um, and I think too there are a lot of genuine practitioners, who might see the same thing, and could be presented with the argument. Well, there's nothing. Everything that you're seeking is in the Catholic faith, and yet the Catholic faith is not compromising its values. We're
Exactly.
not compromising on those because we know them to be truth, and we know them to come from God, Jesus Christ.
Exactly. I was actually just about to say that, that if anybody's truly seeking deep spirituality, you're thirsting and longing for it, you can find it easily in the Catholic tradition. We have the longest spiritual tradition of any Christian religion by far. And it actually comes from God. I mean, it starts with probably in the early 4th, 3rd century with all the monks out in the desert who used to just go pray for long hours like Jesus did and give their lives completely to Jesus. And down through the centuries, we've developed such a spirituality and a mysticism that nobody needs to search. We just need to get in touch with the depths of our faith. And I would ask anybody who's watching to check out our video. I think it's the best spiritual books. It's our favorite book recommendations. If I remember, I'll put it at the end or I'll post it here. But if you click on that, we give our best book recommendations for you to go deeper in your faith. We also have a prayer series, 12-part prayer series. We put, I think, 6 parts on our YouTube channel, and it leads you through the different stages of prayer to go deeper with Jesus. Because you don't need to do what so many people do. You don't need to go off the trails like even many Catholic priests and nuns and people who are claiming to be leaders. They have gone off the rails trying to find spirituality in different religions, like Robert Kennedy, who claims to be a Catholic priest and a Zen master, which is an oxymoron, or Father Keating or Father Basil Pennington, who practice centering prayer. And it's kind of the opposite, the way they practice it, the opposite of true spiritual contemplation. And we write about this in our book, but we don't want to be led astray by false spiritualities, which is why we wrote about counterfeit spirituality. And there's so many books. Check out A Fire Within. And if you're not really deep yet in your faith, check out Prayer Primer by Father Dubay. That is a very beginning look at how to pray and how to go deeper with God and how to start the deeper meditative and contemplative prayer that'll lead you right to the heart of Jesus. Sorry, that was a tangent that I
No,
just...
no. That's good. That's good. Yeah, absolutely.
So do you have any closing thoughts for our listeners? You said, we have a deep prayer tradition, you found Christ. Do you have anything, from your life that you would like to share with them?
Well, I guess it would be this. I was led a lot by the story of Jacob and the angel. And I encountered that for the first time in Judaism, when I was studying Judaism and biblical Hebrew. And I think that if I were going to say something to people, I'd say, don't be afraid to wrestle with God. Like, don't be afraid of that struggle. Don't be afraid to say, well, what are these teachings? And would they change my life? Don't be afraid to come to Jesus and bring those hard questions. This is what I told my son, when we're going through catechism, and I said, nothing is taboo. Nothing is out of bounds. You ask any question you want. And what I will do is I'll either be able to provide you an answer from the Gospels, I'll be able to go find an answer from the catechism, or I'll give you something to think about and to wrestle with. And I think we need to be open. I'd say just be open to doing that. Be open to coming to Christ and working with him, because he wants to work with us.
And don't be satisfied with just coming to Christ. I want to challenge Catholics to go deeper and do what you did. And that's read the Bible, read the Psalms, read the Psalms daily.
Pray the Bible.
Pray the Bible. People tell me, I've had many Protestants tell me, I just read the Bible in like a week or, a month. I'm like, great. You probably didn't even think about it if you're reading it that fast. But I'm someone who likes to literally take a half an hour just to read a chapter because I want to meditate on the words. I want to think about them. I want to see what God's speaking to me through them. And sure, you could read the Bible as a textbook. That's fine. But if we want to pray the Bible, that's a whole different horse of a different color. And so I would challenge people to really pray the Bible, read the Bible, and pray their prayers to go deeper with God more than you ever have before. Life is short. You don't get a second chance. It's now or never. And there are so many Christians who are on the internet arguing, but they don't have a prayer life with Jesus. There are so many Christians who I know who are directors of religious education. And because we get so busy, we stop praying, or it's hard to find a prayer life. Jesus has to be number one. For most of my life, for the last 2 decades, I've prayed for an hour before I even leave the house in the morning. I pray for an hour before I even start the day. And I want to challenge people, even if it's not an hour, to make a good prayer time before you start your day every single day without fail. I want to challenge you guys to pray, to kick up your prayer life and to fall more in love with Jesus.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. I want to thank you, Henry, for sharing your story with us. And I want to thank you for, it's a great journey. A lot of people are seeking. They are seekers. And I hope we find a lot of seekers here. And we actually had an amazing story, which you probably watched, of a Hindu who said that none of her 33 million gods could help her, but Jesus Christ radically changed her life, cast out 13 demons, and countless suicide attempts later, he saved her life. And it's just, that's what Jesus does. That's what he did in my life. That's what he's done in your life. It's what he's done in so many lives. And I want people to know the real Jesus Christ, not just a textbook Jesus that we just learn about in religious education or growing up, but to come to know the real Jesus that literally transforms lives. So thank you for sharing your story and letting us know how Christ has changed your life.
Thank you, Bryan. Yeah, I really appreciate it. This is great conversation.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. And I want to thank everybody here for watching. As always, Catholic Truth, your place to know, love, and live your faith, and to become set on fire for it, and even to learn how to defend it. If you like this video, please share it with others. Please don't smash, because we're Catholic, for crying out loud. Just kiss that like button, just give it a little tap-a-roo, tap-a-roo, and make sure that you share it. And if you have any questions, please put them down below in the comment section. And if you could support our ministry, please feel free to do that. We have our PayPal, Patreon down below, along with our Facebook, our Pinterest, our podcast, our YouTube. We literally have everything down below. So check it out. Thank you all for watching. We are going to be praying for you, and make sure that you are always praying for us, for our ministry, and for all the people that we are reaching on a daily basis. Thank you all, and God bless.